Hello, good afternoon. So, my name is Ricardo, and today I'll be speaking about passport security in group income. So, I'll just go ahead and get started with that. So I'm sure that many of you have seen a form that looks something like that if you use the internet. So here we have a few elements. We have essentially two fields, one with a username, one with a password, and then there is a button to sign in, and sometimes there is a link to a page if we happen to have forgotten our password or for some reason are unable to log in. So, my talk today will be centered around how this works and, in particular, about how passwords grouping, how passwords work in group income and how they work differently in group income compared to how they typically work on most sites on the internet where you typically uh, can find a form like this one, even though the group income form is almost exactly like this. I guess I should start by saying why do we need passwords in group income? It all boils down to identity. So we need a password for pretty much the same reason that other sites that need a password do, which is to connect some username or some type of identity to some related identity that is part of group income. So this way, if one user is talking to another user, we can be certain that that's what's happening. And in particular, in group income, unlike how it works with other sites that are not um, uh, decentralized the same way that group income is. I'm comparing now group income with sites that have like a central server, which is how most sites on the internet work. We have this concept of unique secrets. So secrets it has a specific meaning, but we don't need to go into the technical details of that. What that means is just something that is known just to that identity. So if I'm group income user, there are certain values that are generated on my machine, and I should not share those with the world or with other users because if I do that, then they would be able to impersonate me. So we use these secrets for two different purposes. That they are related but slightly different. So one of them is for proving to peers who we are. So if I am communicating with another user, they can know that I am the one that is sending that particular message or performing that particular action, as opposed to it being someone else. And the technical term for that is digital signatures. And then the other purpose for these unique secrets that are tied to an identity in group income is to be able to exchange information confidentially. So the technical term for this is encryption, and what this means is that I'm able to communicate with another peer or within a group, and that only the recipients that I explicitly authorize are able to read the contents of that communication. So the main takeaway here is that these secrets are meant to be kept to ourselves. So we shouldn't be sharing them freely, because otherwise we can compromise our identity. And since we are using this for for confidentiality, what that means also is that if we were to share this with someone else, they will be able to uh, potentially read messages, which would break the encryption. This is something that will be quite important in this talk, so we'll come back to this later. So now going back to the topic of passwords in group income and how they actually work. So the main takeaway from this presentation, which I put now early on, is that passwords are handled in a way that it's an oblivious authentication protocol. So what do each of these terms mean? Well, oblivious is a fancy word that you may also see referred as zero knowledge. What that means is that I'm sharing some, I'm proving to someone something that I know, and I prove to them that I know that without them, without actually sharing any information about what I know. So, so for example, if I wanted to show someone that I have more than I don't know, $10 on my account, and I don't want to share my bank balance with them, I could make a purchase for some item that is over $10, and then that would be a way of showing that. Then authentication is another word that in this context it means is someone who they claim to be. It's basically answering that question, so it's tying something to an identity. And protocol is also another fancy word that it's a series of rules that computers follow to talk to one another. So basically, the way that passwords are handling group income is in a way that we use passwords such that no one but ourselves can learn anything about that password, and we're able to do this in order to tie some password, in this case, to some identity. Well, since we're using passwords, let's take a look at how passwords are usually done. This is how they usually work in most sites where you see a form like the one I showed at the beginning of this presentation, where you have like this username and password and the submit button. So the first item that we have there, of course, is the form where you type this information in. And then you have three other steps. The reason why the fill in those other steps in the presentation is different. So why it has a red border and gray and a white background as opposed to green background is that that's happening on the server usually. So those steps are after typing in the username and password, that information is submitted to the server. Then the server does some processing to verify the credentials that are sent. So that username and password, that's usually compared with some table that already exists on the server, and then the server answers the question of is this the information that I'm supposed to get for that user, and if that works, then some kind of session is established in a way that is defined by that particular site. Now, if we wanted to use passwords in group income, let's see at let's see which kind of options we could have. So one option is we follow this typical way of doing passwords that I just described. So we do this server-based authentication, like the way that most sites do. So the upside of this is that it's relatively simple to do. I have this item in the presentation. The text is quite small. I don't know if you can see it, but it says rate limiting, which what that means is that the server in this case is able to detect whether there are too many attempts for some particular user, so it can take actions to prevent that from happening. So if let's say that there is some user and then someone is trying to log in repeatedly as that user, then the server can detect these attempts and they can take some action, like say temporarily restrict that account or restrict that machine from making more attempts or notify the user or yeah, take some particular step. The downside of this, however, is pretty significant, and that is that the password or something that can be used to um, as a password is shared with the server. And an implication of this is that we have to trust the server and because implementing this usually then means that these secrets that we're using in group income will be then sent back to us through the server. It's difficult to make the claim that what we are doing is end-to-end encrypted because it requires this trusted server and it also requires that the server keeps some information that could be used to look at everything that is being sent. So this is not really a good alternative. So let's say then that we decide to go another route and we say we'll derive these secrets locally, for example, from a password. So in this case, we do all the processing in the user's machine. We don't send information to the server, and it's totally possible to do this. So the upside is also this is relatively simple to do. We don't need to trust the server or anyone really. So it's good, this works, but it has another significant downside, which is something that is called offline attacks, which is that because this information is now stored in a decentralized way. Anyone can retrieve it, and then they can, in the comfort of their own machine or machines, attempt to break a password. This wouldn't be an issue if we put a requirement that or made an assumption that everyone will choose a secure password that will never get compromised, but it's not realistic of an expectation, and it's usually difficult for people to remember password that will be reasonably long and strong. And even if most people did that, still, if someone didn't do it, then that could have still implications for the confidentiality of, say, a group. And because anyone can do this offline, it also makes it difficult to detect whether there was some password breach or not, and obviously to react to that since it's difficult to detect. So this also is not an ideal solution. So let's look first then at some password alternatives, since after all, it looks like these days there are many sites that are trying to move away from passwords, so we could do that, right? Well, we could, and in fact, there are several alternatives that at our disposal for doing this, but they also don't um have all the desired properties because um, if you look at all of these solutions, they typically have one of these issues. So it's either difficult or impossible to do account recovery. So like that forgot password link that is at the beginning of the form, that would be quite difficult to do if everything is handled locally on some user's device, for example. Or there is some special hardware required, like say smartphone or like a USB token or something like that. And many of these solutions also are uh, difficult to work with if one wants to do encryption. So like the signing part, so like proving who we are, sometimes that works, but then the encryption part is not as well supported. So these are some concrete alternatives that exist that I'm mentioning for the sake of completeness. So the first option would be the do-it-yourself approach. So this would be the option of just generating some information when, say, the user registers. This has the downside that it's impossible to do account recovery because the information is stored on that device. So let's say that the user registered on their phone, and then for whatever reason they lost that phone, or it was stolen, or it was destroyed, or yeah, something happened to it, and then the user wants to log into their account using a different phone, and then they won't be able to do that because these secrets were created on that phone. So this is not ideal in that sense. Then the other option is using a single sign-on. Single sign-on means like delegating the accounts part to a third party. So if you've seen on some website like these buttons, like sign in with, and then like some social media site, for example, that's single sign-on. This is something that generally works quite well for centralized systems, but for decentralized systems, it doesn't work that well because one thing is that it requires trusting that third party. This is something that could be potentially overcome, or maybe it's not that important, but the main thing is that it's difficult or impossible because there is no clear framework for handling secret keys, which we need for group income. So this only answers the question of is this user this particular user? But as I showed at the beginning, we need to have these secrets that exist on that user's device, and yeah, there's no good framework for this. And then there is this more recent standard that is in um, that is in that is being developed right now, and it's supported by most browsers, and it's showing a lot of promise. That is called WebAuthn, which is more of a standardized way of doing both of these things. But if we were to use that exclusively, it has the same issue that any of these techniques do, which is that it's difficult to do account recovery, and doing encryption is not something that is currently supported everywhere. And in some cases, this also requires some kind of dedicated hardware It's actually pretty complex protocol, but yeah, it's also not ideal um, to rely just on that. So because of that, we are back to using passwords. So, what are some pros of passwords? Well, they are familiar, so users already know what a password is and how to use it. The UI doesn't need to be too complicated. It's already been well done, and there's not a big need to deviate from that. They can be flexible in that they work everywhere, and passwords are something that can be remembered. So um, it can be possible to recover an account by just remembering that password. So it's not tied to some particular device. But the main con of password is that not everyone uses secure password, and people also use passwords like the same password on different sites. Sometimes even secure passwords can be compromised, for example, by malware or uh, password database being breached, and yeah, that's downside of using passwords. So, how could we use passwords in group income, and what should we be looking for? Well, ideally, we would want to not have to trust the server, uh, or if we have to trust the server, not to trust it more than we really have to. Also, we would like to avoid sharing our actual password with the server or anything that can be used to recover our password or anything that is password like. So we would want everything to be processed on, or most things to be processed on our device to the greatest extent possible. We would like to also limit these attacks, like if someone wanted to guess someone's password, we would like to be able to detect that or limit that or in some way have the ability to respond to this sort of attack. And of course, we want something to be as simple as it needs to be, both for the users and for the uh, people implementing the protocol that we will be using. So now I will go into some technical concepts that I think are required to get an understanding to the solution we came up with for this. And one of those concepts is salting. What that means is adding some randomness to a password. This makes guessing a particular password harder. So if I take some password here, I have three examples. So one is password one, the other one is dragon, the other one is baseball. The server typically, or in the case of group income, the client, so like the user's browser generates some random string, and that random string is combined with the password. This is done to sort some specific attacks that can be used to um, probe for particular passwords. And the important thing is that this has to be random, and so it's not derived from the password, even if it might look like that from the examples I had, because everything is different. But so if you have two users that have the same password, in this case, let's say password one, then that salt will be random, so it will be different for each user, even if they have the same password. Then the Other good practice when it comes to password and password storage is that these salted passwords that we had previously are hashed. Hashing it just means that some transformation is applied to it, and the salt is stored together with the hash so that we can then compare the hash. I have another example in the next. So this is one example. So we have, let's say, this password, let's say password one. Then we add this salt to it, and then we compute this hash. And like I said, this hash just means some mathematical transformation that is applied to it that is easy to apply, but uh, really, really, really hard to reverse. So a hash is much longer than in this example, but it looks, for example, something like that. Like the F8A744 to the, or something like that. So then after the password is stored, the last step is verifying that the password worked. So like this would be, for example, when one hits submit in the login form. So the steps are we retrieve the salt from the database. Remember that it was stored alongside the password. Then the password that was provided by the user is hashed with together with salt, and then we check whether the two hashes match. So let's say the password was password one, so we fetch that salt from the database. Then we hash the salted password. So the password that the user provided was password one, which in this case was the correct password. So then we add the salt to it, and then we hash it, and then we get this hash. Then we check it. Is the hash that we have what was stored? Yes, in this case it was. So then that means that the password is correct, and we can establish a session. Um, so if we put it all together for group income, the way we do it is that we instead of using one salt like it's typically used, we use two actually. One we use for actually verifying that the user is who they claim to be, and then the other one is sent. In this case, only if the user is who they claim to be, then is shared with the user, and we use that locally on the user's device for recovering these secrets that are particular to a user's identity. So that way we don't have to store any information about that identity uh, in the server in a way that it could compromise that user's identity or uh, the confidentiality of any information. Then both of these salts are stored on the server because we need to be able to perform this authentication step, and we need to be able to send it to send the key derivation salt back to the user. So a simplified login flow in Group Income looks something like this. Um, so the user asks the server for the authentication salt. Uh, then this step is performed by the server. So the salted password hash is sent to the server. Then if it's okay, of course, the server sends us back the key derivation hash or salt, and then we use this to derive the key. Um, so The result of this uh, is that we don't have to trust the server that much, um, because the only thing that the server is doing is storing the salts. One downside is that uh, the server, if server is say malicious or compromised in the future, it could attempt to guess these weak passwords. But this is not as bad as it sounds, because it's still better than the alternative, which is that anyone can perform these sorts of attacks. So uh, yeah, it's, I think, a reasonable compromise. Then by doing things in this more roundabout way, then what this means is that the password is not sent to the server, not even temporarily, so we don't have to trust, say that the server doesn't keep logs or anything like that, because we are not really sending the server our password. So so long as we use reasonably safe long password, we should be safe. And even if the in that case, even if the server were to uh, try to um, brute force, so like try and guess our password, that will not really do much. Then, because in we're including server in this step, not only are we able to do this account recovery, but also we are able to uh, detect login attempts that are trying to do. So this is an advantage that allows us to do the same types of things that other websites can do. So we could take different actions in this case, such as restricting logging in from that particular uh, machine that is sending these bogus login attempts, or we could temporarily log that particular account, or we could warn our users that something fishy is going on. And also, this scheme is more complex than other alternatives, but it's, I think, the simplest one that meets the goals that we set. So that's all I had. Sorry for the heavy technical details at the end, but I wanted to include that to sort of support what I was talking about, instead of just saying just trust me in this. So I hope some of it made sense at least. And yeah, if you have any questions, I would be glad to
Are
answer.
there examples of prior art? Sorry, prior art that you referred to when developing this?
Yes, there are. So there are several password, like these oblivious or zero knowledge password schemes that unfortunately are not used as much on the internet as they should, I think. But one example, I think, is from um, TLS, which is what you use when you visit like these websites, can HTTPS. Uh, websites actually use certificates, which are different, but there is a way of using passwords with TLS. So that's one example of that. And like that, there are like other um, protocols.
And you may do it, you just may not have mentioned it. Do you do key stretching when you do the hashing?
Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Do you
Can you
do
speak
key
up?
stretching? Do you do key stretching when you do the hashing?
Yes, we do. Yes. So I presented a simplified version of what we actually do, but yes, we are using a script together with the hashing and so like both. So the password is hashed twice. So we have these two salts and both uh, hashes use a script with a high number of iterations. I don't remember the exact configuration we use, but yes, we use key stretching.
Hey, great presentation. Thanks, Ricardo. I didn't catch if you had mentioned it. Are you able to do password recovery with your scheme, or if the user forgets their password, are they permanently locked out of their account?
Partially. So since the elements that are tied to your particular identity are only handled locally and they're not shared with the server, and they are also derived from just from your password, either directly or indirectly for recovery. If you do forget your password, then you will lose access to this, and in that sense, you will be permanently locked out from your account. That said, the information that exists on the server could potentially be replaced. So like the password related information, so like these salts that we store. So combined with some yet undeveloped password recovery mechanism, like for example sharing your like you could designate some person or group of persons to do password recovery uh, in case you forget your password. So if we were to develop something like that together with the ability to replace records on the server, you could have password recovery. But right now, since we haven't done that, you need to remember your password.
No, I just wanted to say thank you, Ricardo, so much for that talk. Um, and yeah, I think we're probably, unless there's any other questions, we're probably done. No other questions? Well, everybody, let's give Ricardo a round of applause for his presentation. Yeah. And if you thought that presentation was hard, then think about just how hard it's going to be to try to attack your account. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming here, and have a great night, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to an event here at the Internet Archive. If you are part of an organization that's into universal access to all knowledge or kind of open information, open source software, stuff like that, you're welcome to apply to have an event here. Our email address is just evan3d@archive.org. And yeah, we'll send you the form for event submission. So thank you very much.